So actually, there was somebody that commented on the first episode. Did you see this recently? Saying it'd be good if you guys introduce yourself. You see that?
Yeah.
Do you want to do like a quick little intro? I'll go first. I'm Danny, 23, and I am a co-founder of Carter. Yeah, I just like making stuff, and I've done that since I was a kid. So, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I'm Hugh. I'm 24 and I write code. That's
Nice.
it.
Nice.
I write code. Currently, I'm writing code at Carter. I'm
Yeah.
a co-founder, making AI talk and have conversations and friendships and relationships and companionships with humans in games.
Beautiful.
Which is awesome. Dream
That's a
come
really
true.
nice sum up. I think it's quite good because this is like episode 2. People don't quite know us yet. And so there's a fine line between, okay, we should probably introduce ourselves versus we should probably just jump in because nobody really cares.
Yeah, there's a balance.
Yeah, there's a balance. Okay, so without further ado, I have some topics, secret topics that you've probably already heard.
Yeah.
Okay, number 1 is how could AI change different jobs? So all over Twitter, my Twitter, I know it's all over your Twitter as well. Some people are like massively for this technology. Oh my God, I can't wait for this to happen and that to happen and this model to come out and this to get better. But the flip side, there are a bunch of people that are really quite scared as to what's going to happen to their jobs, what's going to happen to their like daily life, their work, and if they're going to stay at the company and still be useful and provide value at the company that they're currently working in. So the 4 different kind of jobs that I have listed down that we can talk about are, number 1, artists. So like that could be game artists or even just like illustrators and people that create like beautiful visuals for like marketing purposes and that type of thing. So artists, voice actors, programmers, and like weirdly investors and equity researchers because of this new Bloomberg GPT model that is supposedly coming out. So why don't we kick off with the first one, artists. What are your thoughts on, particularly we're in the gaming space, what are your thoughts on game artists and game illustrators, how they would be affected either positively, neutrally, or negatively going forward with AI getting better and better at art generation?
Yeah, we touched on this last episode. I actually think there's 2 things here, which is that there's a question of can AI do that thing? And then the second part of that is, will AI do that thing? So, because there's other forces at play. So with art, a lot of the value of art is that a human has created it. There's art that's like a means to an end. So you might have like a 3D model in a video game that is part of a larger world. And so a lot of the time, you know, a game studio will want to create a city. And so they will get like an army of 3D modelers to make everything in the city, or they'll just purchase a bunch of assets and build the city that way. Those sort of tasks I see being heavily automated because it's like a problem at scale that can be very, very cheaply done by an AI system. And you can communicate better with an AI system and in a faster feedback loop than you could even with like a freelancer, because it's just a conversation. It's like, make me a car, make it yellow. Okay, actually I wanted a supercar. Actually, no, I want a truck. Make me a blue truck. Okay, make me 3 trucks like that, but one of them is bigger. Okay, make me one like that, but it has spokes for wheels or whatever, right? That kind of feedback and that immediate rendering is something that we're just about to see. And so I think those sort of tasks are going to be done by AI. But then there are going to be always things that are done by humans. And the reason is because the value is that the human did it. So it's like a famous artist, even like in the gaming space, a famous 3D artist who has a certain style. And that there's like value that person made that thing. If you remember when Cyberpunk launched, the Cyberpunk game?
Yeah.
And Keanu Reeves was in it.
Yeah.
And the value was that Keanu Reeves was in it. And he was like doing all the press stuff, and that was the value. And I think that will continue to happen, where you could have a random character that's AI generated or you could have a human who brings the value of their face and personality into the story.
Yeah, we spoke about this last episode, and basically the idea of, okay, a human did this thing, and therefore it's much more valuable because there's so much AI generated content that's like the layer of noise. And if you are the human that's created something and you've got like a brand around you, that in and of itself will be intrinsically valuable because people have that kind of like sentimental feeling. So I actually think one of the best kind of differentiators that you could probably do as an artist, and I'm not an artist, so I don't know how really the world works, but if you were to create a brand around your, well, it's debatable that I'm not an artist.
I think you're an artist.
I might say that I'm an artist.
Incredibly good at designing characters at the moment.
Characters, using Carter,
backstories.
I can create some pretty gnarly.
Yeah, you're
characters.
definitely the most talented like character engineer we have in the office.
Well, thank you, man.
Yeah,
That means a
definitely.
lot.
I think that's an art.
Yeah, I think so. Art is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Anywho, so I actually think if you are a 3D artist or just like an artist in a game artist in general, if you kind of like over-index on creating content and creating a personal brand around yourself, where you share your beautiful artistry and you maybe like create some really awesome content around it and create some awesome videos of your process and just become kind of like a artist slash like video content creator, and start to develop a following for your beautiful art. When inevitably game studios will probably reach out to you because they love your style and you've also got a brand and they want to kind of leverage that brand for their game. When you start working with a game studio on a particular title, if people know that it's your art that's going into a particular game, you're designing the characters, or you're designing some of the really important assets in the game, that will become intrinsically valuable. The same way that you watch a Scorsese because it's a Scorsese, or a Tarantino because it's a Tarantino. I think one of the great differentiators that you could do if you're an artist right now is to like really focus on building a brand. What do you think?
Yeah. I also have a bit of an interest in group art. So there's like those Minecraft communities that will build like something huge in Minecraft together.
Yeah.
Or like they'll do it in a weekend. They'll build like half of New York in a weekend in Minecraft, or something ridiculous like that. And or like the Death Star from Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it's incredible detail. And it was built by just like a bunch of people who had a spare afternoon or whatever.
Yeah.
And therefore it has value. Whereas if it was just generated, it would have no value.
Yeah.
So the fact that a bunch of people organized themselves, got together and made that thing gives it like value. And also, I don't know whether it's quite right to frame all art as just what value does it have. Because also the people consuming that art are the ones that are going to ultimately decide. So yes, the artists have a huge role to play, and I think their jobs will change. I think that there will be like a first draft thing that's happening. Even with our we're doing our website at the moment, right? And we were like, right, we need some characters for the website. What are they going to look like? And so we were prototyping with AI art generators. But ultimately, we went and downloaded like stock images that looked like the AI art.
Yeah. We actually downloaded people's artwork after like prototyping of what we want with the AI.
Yeah. It was like the inverse of what a lot of people are doing.
Yeah.
Because the quality of the human stuff was great, but also it felt nice to like license something properly and you know, and it makes the website look amazing.
Yeah, I actually think there's going to be something new that emerges, which is I think there are going to be artists, human artists, that build a personal brand around their AI generated art. So like as these models get more and more sort of nuanced and you can feed larger prompts into them and more specific prompts into them, and even move away from like text-based prompts, because it seems like these things are like going to move to, instead of writing, it's so hard to capture what you want by just like writing something out. But when these models move to like, okay, give me a little hand drawing, or give me like a, I don't know, stick man, and tell me how you want this actual end beautiful image to look. When it's more nuanced, I think game artists, artists themselves will develop a certain style with the AI generated art that they create. And that could become valuable. Like that could be like their thing and what they're known for.
Yeah, and also with the art I don't think we're doing it right with the AI generated art right now, which is it's incredibly hard to describe in words. Like imagine in your head right now a circle next to a smaller circle.
Yeah.
Now
I've got
describe that in words exactly and have the computer render that exactly as you see it in your mind. What will happen is you'll describe it in words
Yeah.
and it will render you something that is kind of what you meant and you'll go, that'll do. And that's kind of the whole AI art generating process right now.
Very true.
It's not exact. And so the people that get the best out of the system are the ones that can communicate with the system the best. And I think that's an art form. But also now we're starting to see these like add an image for inspiration tools. And so eventually that will be upload a sketch of something and then the AI will do the rest. And so the better you are at sketching and getting your idea on paper or describing that idea, the better the end result will be. So you'll also have this whole flood of new age artists or existing ones who are trying a new tool who are able to get a lot more out of the system than just like you or I going on there and messing around for half an hour.
Yeah, for sure. I also really think, I know we've got other jobs to explain, but just on this art point, I also think that some art is made even more beautiful and like brings emotion and tears to your eyes based on the story behind the art. So if you had a picture of like a man and woman embracing because they've just gotten married, right? That would look beautiful. You could make that look beautiful if an artist did it or if an AI generated model did it. However, if you're an artist and you're like, okay, so this couple, they actually went to school together and they were best friends at school, and then they got separated because of like conflict in the country, and they got completely moved. Their families moved to different spaces, and then through just I don't know, they always remembered each other, and through their passion for photography, they wound up in the safari together, and they bumped into each other, and they didn't recognize each other at first, but then they remembered each other. Fast forward 2 years, they're now married, and they look back on pictures of when they were kids. And then you look at the piece of art, and you would just start crying because there's so much story around that. Versus just like the picture generated by an AI art generator. It's still beautiful. It could still be the same image, but the story makes it that extra. The story makes it art, kind of.
Yeah.
That's not going to go away. That's one thing about like the creative, the jobs that are incredibly creative. There's always narrative and always story around them that can't necessarily be easily replaced or at all replaced.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as the models get better, they may actually become a very good tool. Do you remember the pizza video back in the day where some person used Photoshop to make like a model in a bikini out of a slice of pizza?
I think so, vaguely.
And it was like photorealistic.
Yeah.
And so we've had the ability to just create stuff out of nothing with computers for ages.
Yeah.
I think it's just the barrier of entry now with AI generated art is so low.
Yeah.
But it's not like we have a new capability. It's just that it's more usable and it's more precise as to what you want.
For sure. Okay, so that's visual art.
Okay.
There's also kind of like audio art in terms of voice actors. So voice actors have lots of, they're used in a variety of different jobs. So like adverts, something relevant to us is like currently in-game NPCs that talk like Trevor in GTA. There's a specific voice behind that. Also like cartoons, like there's the Bart Simpson and Lisa Simpson voice, who's like the same person, super talented voice actor. What happens to voice actors with AI generated voices going forward?
I think this is a harder one.
Why so?
Voice work seems incredibly competitive. Like, there's definitely less work in the voice space than there is in the visual art space. And so I think the more competitive a space is, the more danger it is in to AI. And so, like, if you look at voice, if you watch a bunch of adverts on like normal TV, you will see a lot of adverts now use famous, like, I don't know, David Tennant is on like 3 different adverts with 3 different brands in the cinema, I think. And I was like, okay, so the value is that David Tennant is selling you this thing. It's not that this bank is amazing. It's that David Tennant is saying that the bank is amazing. So I think with voice work, if there are a lot of actors and actresses that are famous on screen who would usually do voice work, I think they will license their AI voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the other voice actors who are in games, or they are really purely a voice actor.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in like two categories. You have people with nice sounding voices, and then you have people that are basically irreplaceable.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that does Optimus Prime
Yeah.
has been doing it forever. I think he's been doing it since like the early cartoons right the way through to the modern films.
Yeah.
And his voice is incredible. And the second they replace that guy, people are going to be like, oh, it's not the same.
Yeah.
Or Morgan Freeman's voice.
Or James L. Jones, Darth Vader.
Right.
Yeah.
And those, getting the actual person to do your advert or to do whatever, it doesn't have to be an advert, but whatever it is, will still have value. But I just think it's going to be very, very difficult for new people to come onto the scene when you can just describe the type of voice. You'd be like, say it like that, but more husky. Imagine being in a recording studio with a voice actor and they do the line once and you say, okay, like that, but a little bit more energetic. Okay, can you say it slower? Blah, blah, blah. I actually did this for a job once. I did this on a film set with...
Did you?
Yeah, so we were filming a Hitman promotion for the video game Hitman. And we had the guy who is Hitman come onto set, and he was the voice of our Hitman.
Nice.
And we made this little recording booth, and he narrate. The thing is, everything we were doing was live. So he had to record live. So he was literally just speaking into a mic like this, watching a projector of a live stream that we were streaming out of the Hitman character. And he would say these like canned phrases. But we flew him from like Germany or wherever he was at the time into, where were we? We were in Devon. In this like obscure mansion, just abandoned, that we turned into this like old style luxurious house.
Yeah.
And the value there was that it was the guy who is Hitman coming to do the voice. So
did you publicize that it was?
Yeah. It's on YouTube somewhere. I'll throw it up on screen probably.
Yeah,
But
cool.
yeah, and that was the guy who was Hitman. And we did like loads of promotion around it, like our actor who was playing Hitman, and then him, and they were like staring each other down, and like, you know, we did all this stuff. But the point was that the value of the voiceover came from that we got the actual guy to do it rather than find someone who sounded the same.
Interesting. So then what are your thoughts on, so like us talking right now, we're talking in a very casual way. It's kind of like normal voice, right?
Yeah.
If you take a scene from a movie, like an incredibly tense scene, the one that comes to mind, have you seen Peaky Blinders?
Yeah.
Okay. You know when Alfie Solomons and Tommy Shelby are having that face-to-face when I think it's the end of season 3, Tommy's little boy has just gone missing and he's asking Alfie if he's taken him. And Alfie is like screaming and in the beginning he's like convincing Tommy that he has taken him. And there's so much emotion. He's screaming, he's pausing. And then he reveals after a long pause, I didn't know about your boy though. And there's like, there's so much gap there. With something as like dramatic as that kind of voice, with the right like breath, with the right emotion, with the screaming, with the mockery. Also, if I try to like mock you and mimic how you speak, and like Alfie did that in that scene with Tommy Shelby, where Alfie Solomons was already playing a voice, Tom Hardy was already playing Alfie Solomons' voice, mocking Tommy Shelby's voice, who Cillian Murphy was playing a Brummie. Do you still think that these AI-generated voices would be able to capture that kind of emotion?
Okay. So I'm just doing this based on what is already in the world, and you can already download it off GitHub.
Okay.
So there is a project that was released by Microsoft in a white paper called Volley, whatever. And it's text-to-speech synthesis. But you can also give it a guide recording. So you can say, okay, here's the base model that has been trained with this voice, and you can output text from it. So you might say, like, maybe you want to recreate Jarvis's voice. You take Paul Bettany's voice. You train the system on that, and it can talk like Paul Bettany. But then what you can do is you can give it like a very, very small sample of, let's say, your voice, and feed that in at the same time as you feed the text in. And the system has learned from Paul Bettany's voice to speak, but it will say it as if you're saying it. And so you can flip it. And so what you can then do is you can pretend to say something a certain way, and the system is able to make Paul Bettany sound how you sounded.
Wait. I'm confused. So are you saying
That's a terrible explanation.
So if you train Valley Volley
Yes.
on Paul Bettany's voice,
Yeah.
and then I say something,
Yes.
would the end output sound like Paul Bettany mimicking me, or sound like me mimicking Paul Bettany?
Okay.
Or is that not the way to think about it?
Yes, I think it could basically do either. But the coolest application by far is the puppeting, because you can train a voice off of a data set, and then you can be like, the line needs to sound more excited. I'll just record my voice saying it, and it puppets the other voice to match how you said it, but in that voice. And what's really interesting is that NVIDIA did this. They have a open source system that is built off of slightly older tech. And they've done this. So every event they do, they have this I am AI promotion.
Right.
And it's this AI system narrating all of these things that AI can do. But the way they did that was they trained a speech model, and then the director of the video went into a recording, and he's a guy, but the AI is a girl voice, female voice. And he's like acting how he wants the AI to say it in his voice, and the AI is able to like copy him in his
way.
Yeah, incredible tech.
So
Incredible
basically,
tech.
what you're saying, if you take that scene of Alfie Solomons and Tommy Shelby, by the way, if you haven't seen that, watch the clip. It's really
Incredible.
good. It's a massive spoiler, so maybe watch the rest of it.
Yeah.
But it's basically this incredibly dramatic scene. But interestingly, with the voice, if I think about Alfie Solomons, who's like a Cockney dude, he goes from speaking quietly, like he's, that evil kind of revenge voice. And then he takes a breath and then goes super loud and like is shouting. Then he goes really quiet and it's like there's a touch of sentimentality. So you're saying that you take just generic Tom Hardy voice or Alfie Solomon voice, the character that he plays, take that voice, take the data set of Tom Hardy speaking. Then if you want to create this intonation and this loud part and this dramatic part and the sentimental part, you say the line, and then that will get fed to the model, and then the model will take on Alfie Solomons' voice, but using the way that you said it.
Yeah, think of it like...
That's insane.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think this is the trap people are falling into with the like pop AI culture, which is that people think prompts are just text. But prompts can be audio. Prompts could be video. We're already seeing prompts becoming images. You give it like an inspiration image. It's just a different type of prompt that you're giving the system that it's like following. All these systems do, they just like take in streams of numbers and they output streams of numbers. That's all these models do. And so we as humans decide what those numbers represent. That's basically what's going on. With every AI model, that's all it's doing. Numbers in, numbers out. And either end, we turn them into the value that we want. And we do those in different ways. So with text, with something like GPT-3, you're turning all of the text in their data set and basically on the internet, you're turning them into streams of numbers. So you might have the cat would be like 12, 506, right? You just give that to an AI and it turns it into sat on the, and that is an output of numbers of like 7, 9, 12. And so you get 12, 506, 7, 9, 12. That's your full sentence. That's your sentence completion, either side. That's what's happening. And so the input text, the input numbers could be representing pixels. So your prompt can be audio, it can be images, it can be literally anything.
Crazy.
Let me just check the cameras before we move on to the next topic. It's fine. Okay.
All good?
Yeah. I'm back. We'll leave that in.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Okay. Cool. So that was voice actors. So we've got 2 more on this topic. The next one is interesting because we've had a lot of people in the Discord, people in Carter's Discord, and people just like in your personal Discord And people, even in my comments on TikTok, ask about how do I get into coding? What does coding become in this new world of AI? Like, what do I do? I love this code stuff, and I'm learning it. I'm learning Python. I'm learning JavaScript. I want to learn ML. But these models now can write incredible code. They can write production-ready code, and you can get the code generated by just giving them what you want in English. So where's my value? So how do AI models change the job of software engineering? And yeah. Are you off, Haywa?
See you, Haywa.
Ciao. See ya.
Thank you. Bye.
See you later.
Okay. Have you heard about AutoGPT?
AutoGPT?
Yes.
No.
So this week, there's something trending on GitHub. It's called AutoGPT.
Yeah.
And it's a little terrifying. So what you do is you give it your OpenAI token with access to GPT-4 if you've been approved. And it basically will loop requests to GPT-4. And so what people are realizing, there's a couple of projects like this. So they got one which is AutoGPT, and then another one that's really popular is called LangChain, where people are realizing you can chain outputs together and build an entire system just based on input and output of these LLMs, even in a loop. Like we've started doing this and experimenting with this, but AutoGPT takes it to another level. You can literally say, I want an app that does this, this, and this, or solves this problem. And it will figure out, it will think methodically, and then it will like loop requests through itself, and it will follow its own instructions over and over again until it's kind of reached the destination. I haven't fully looked into it of how it's doing that and how it knows it's done and all of that stuff, but it's an open source thing. Anyone can use this. I think that software development is going to be less about the language you're using, less about the thing you're building, or how you're building it. It's going to be more about how well can you communicate to these systems and how well can you evaluate what they put out. Because I think one thing that's not going to go away for a long time is trusting 100% the output of the system.
For sure.
So if a system writes a bunch of code, it might run, but running it is going to have an increasing risk as these models get more and more intelligent and maybe even move towards AGI. And so you still need to understand programming. You still need to understand, because you're not going to be writing it, you're going to be evaluating it. This is the short term. It's like every programmer is now going to be an evaluator.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a history question because I don't know the answer myself.
Oh, no.
So
I made a mistake talking about history on the first episode.
I'm actually quite interested. Maybe this is something that we need to look up. But if you go back to like, I don't know, the 80s or something, and you had access, you like worked at IBM and you had access to C, and like you could write C when everybody else at home was writing BASIC and they had no access to C, and you wrote C really, really well, and you built a career as a really good developer using C. And then Python starts to gain popularity.
Yeah.
And Python is now used in enterprise products. And then you've got other C-flavored languages that come up that are far more readable, far more easy to learn, and just more prevalent in the world. Did those original C developers fear Python coming along because because they spent all the time learning how to code in C and developed that as their unique skill set, but then Python came along and basically did the exact same thing. Okay, Python's super slow, but whatever. Did the same thing, and you could write amazing products in a much simpler and easy to learn language, and also easier to script. There's no like manual memory allocation, all of these different things. Did they fear like new languages with a higher level of abstraction coming along? Because what I understand from what you're saying is that basically with AI, we are going to a new level of abstraction, which is just English, just write in English, right?
Yes.
So it's like assembly, C, and then blah, 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 and then you get to Python. Now we've got like, you can just write in English.
Yeah.
But all of the C developers still had jobs. They still wrote great code. They probably learned Python, or they went to like low-level, high-performance code. Will all of the programmers currently learning Python and just all of the developers in the world, they're currently really scared as like, is AI going to take my job? it sounds like what you're saying, at least in the short to midterm, that's not the case because it's just a high level of abstraction. You still need to know how to make great products. Is that what you're saying? Or is it a little bit more scary than that where AI has the ability for reasoning and judgment and knows actually how to build great products and isn't just a tool? Where do you kind of land on that?
Okay. This is a big question, and I don't think there's a specific answer. So yes, there used to be developers that were like married to the language, but it was a small percentage, and you'll still find them today. The cool thing is, with programming languages, is that you can change and you can learn a new one, and it's not too hard. Most of the principles apply to most languages, especially C-flavored languages like your Python. I remember when I was younger, when I was learning to code.
What did you learn with?
So I learned, the first thing I ever coded with was Visual Basic.net.
Okay.
And then I moved to C#. Then I did a bit of Python and decided, do you know what? I stopped Python because people on the internet were saying Python's too simple, blah, 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 right? And I was like, oh, this must be bad.
Yeah.
And I went down like this whole JavaScript rabbit hole for years. I even started a business knowing mainly JavaScript.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that got me really far because you can put JavaScript on anyone's computer in a browser, which makes total sense. Like, I love that. Python's way more difficult to get onto someone else's machine.
For sure.
So you run it in the cloud. But then, like, AI really is just Python. Most people are writing AI systems with Python. Anyone who's trying to do something performant maybe will write it in C++, but it's like these languages are kind of a means to an end. And so most people are not as opinionated as they used to be, especially because of the rise of the cloud means that you can run most languages in the cloud. Most languages can communicate through like a REST API or something. So it doesn't really matter what you write it in. There's even people like Netflix. They don't really care what you write it in. So if you work for Netflix, they have a bunch of microservices. So microservices are like, 50 lines of code with a specific task that runs over here, and then everything's fragmented. You don't just have one program, you have hundreds or thousands of little programs all doing their own little task scattered through the cloud.
Right.
And so you can spin them up in parallel if you've got like lots of people watching Netflix at the same time. Maybe the thing that tells Netflix you paused your thing scales up to like 1,000 different clones, and then write down when everyone stops watching Peaky Blinders or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really nice. And they were like, just write it in whatever code you feel natural, because that makes the most sense. Why would you require an engineer to write something in that they are less proficient in? It's like asking you to write a book in French. Like, you could probably do it, but it would be a huge task, and it would have a bunch.
I could do it.
Yeah, and it would have a bunch of. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. So you could do it, but you would need a ton of help, whether that's GPT-4 or a French dictionary or whatever. You could do it, but it would be a lot of work, and it would be lower quality than if you had just done it in your fluent language. And so I don't think languages are going to think. I think that the English language becoming the programming language means that the title programmer might be something. I was saying this to Becca, my girlfriend, the other night. I was saying, I think I'm going to tell my kids that I used to be a programmer.
So what? So
and they're going to say, "What's that, Daddy?" I just don't think that I think it's going to be so niche. If you call yourself if you can speak English now. Okay, let's put it another way. If you write Python right now, your system that you write at the end of it is able to output a like action. So you're making little tools to solve a problem. GPT-4, you give it English and it outputs English, which means it is capable of talking to itself. It's a bit like writing a Python program that can write Python, except it's intelligent and it knows what Python to write. And it can translate things instantly. Like somebody in the Discord the other day was asking why our docs don't have Go language support.
Right.
So I was like, hey, GPT-4, give me the Python example, but in Go.
Yeah.
And it was like, here you go. I don't write that language. And I was like, that seems correct. I gave it to him and he was like, yeah, thank you. So I think that like the capability of these systems is much larger than like choosing between languages. I think it's going to make everybody a programmer.
Yeah, but at the same token, that I think the big shining light here is that being a programmer is not just the syntax. Like it's not like to put void here and to make this method private and you miss a semicolon and that.
Yeah.
Like that's just the syntax. It's just okay, you've learned this language. The skill of being an engineer and also being like a product person where product person also means that you know what could be useful.
What's
right?
a product person?
A person that makes stuff for people,
Okay.
Like
An engineer or like a designer.
well, that's for our industry. But the product
Yeah.
person at Coke is the dude that makes the syrup, right?
Okay.
Like I'm trying to remove away from the tools that we use. He uses, I don't know, pipettes, and we use JavaScript.
Yeah.
I'm trying to move away from the tools. The core skill remains the same, which is what people want. You know how to solve a particular problem and provide some sort of form of entertainment and provide something of value. And you also know, okay, this isn't going to go out to one person, it's going to go out to a million, so it needs to be written differently. If it's going to one person versus if it's going to a million people, it needs to be scalable.
But why wouldn't a model know that?
Well, it's not that the model wouldn't know that, it's that you know that, and therefore you tell the model. So like if you take some random person and say, here, build this product that's going to go out to 10 million people, they're probably not going to prompt the model with the right thing. It still requires a brain that understands how products work, how problems and solutions work, and how to like make a product better over time. It still needs that person that can actually build something of value, depending on regardless of whether they're writing the code manually or telling the model to do it.
Okay, I'm going to use a Marvel reference. Imagine normal languages are like Python and stuff is a hammer.
Okay.
GPT-4 is Mjolnir.
Okay.
It's like the most powerful hammer. It can think for itself. You can call it. It's powered by lightning. It's owned by a god. Like it is the most hammery hammer you've ever seen, right? There is no equivalent. So Mjolnir, that is what is coming, and people are only just realizing what these models are capable of. So yes, you do need to know all of those things, but there's no reason why programmers don't just become like consultants in the future.
Yes, but Mjolnir can only be lifted by the by the person that can rightfully rule Asgard.
So Sam Altman's
And
so Sam Altman's going to transition into Thor.
You still need to be a person
Yeah.
that could rightfully rule Asgard. And that in the context of Python as a hammer and GPT-4 as Mjolnir, you still need to be a person that knows how great products are built and what products are of value to people.
Why?
Because otherwise you can't wield Mjolnir.
Why can't GPT-4 know all of that stuff and you just say, I want to start a yoga brand this morning?
Okay, a yoga brand is different. I'm talking more about, so you could build anything with these models, right?
Yes.
We're saying that you could build absolutely anything. The models can know what to build in certain circumstances. But like the kind of products that will move humanity forward, the type of things that will get us to Mars, the type of things that will get us to reliably detect and cure cancer straight away. These things, I don't know if immediately a model will A, think of that to solve, B, find a viable solution, C, implement that solution, and D, make it scalable. It feels like at least in the medium term, before we've got AGI, before we've got Ultron, or hopefully Vision, there still needs to be a human in the loop to either decide what needs to be built or how it should be built. The actual building happens by the models, but there's still the human that has the mind of knowing what people need and want. And that is what programmers may transition to. And in the end, it may not be a job anymore, but...
There's no value to having a system that just sits in the corner and generates apps.
Yeah, exactly.
So like there needs to be demand and someone needs to go, hey, this is a problem we would like to be solved. But I think that 90% of how we would solve that problem is going to be done by these models within 5 years. For certain things, especially in the software world. Like if you look at GitHub Copilot X, this is such a big bump up from standard Copilot. It's basically like ChatGPT with specific domain knowledge, but it's generalizable enough that you can be like, hey, can you just generate me 10 ways of saying the same phrase? That's not a programming task, but it has enough knowledge about the world to be like, yes, I recognize this phrase, and I have seen it this many times, and I know that these sentences make sense, so here's 10 versions. So I think that is probably going to accelerate. Like, I saw this GitHub statistic, and it's like, I think it was people are writing code 50% faster with Copilot. This is the current version. So now I can get 2 programmers for every programmer.
2 programmers
with
for the price
Copilot.
of 1.
So that's buy one, get one free on programmers. That is with 1 plugin.
So they're discounted 50% already.
Yes. Now we're moving to Copilot X. Now that's like having ChatGPT. So not only is it going to generate your code, it's going to advise you on what code it should be generating. And it's more of a conversation. So you're right. Anyone who's good at having that conversation will be the top of their game. But they are also teaching that model how best to have conversations.
Yes. And so if like B2B SaaS is worrying because but I really think frontier technology, at least for a while, will be massively helped, and probably all of the building will be done in terms of like the CAD models and the code for frontier stuff, like the equipment and the engineering it takes to get to Mars, some like diseases that are currently incurable, like fibromyalgia, these types of things that there is currently no cure for. I think AI will massively, massively, massively help. But it seems like there would still need to be a human in the loop to tell it to do that problem and also have the conversation with it. Because I don't think building a to-do list app for these models, they can do it very, very simply, very easily.
Absolutely.
These frontier things, I think, will take a little bit longer. And also there's the regulation aspect, there's the human aspect. Okay, it created this thing, but we're not going to use it yet because it needs to outperform a human by 1,000x before we even start experimenting with it. There are the human things. I think the best engineers will probably go to these more frontier problems. Yeah,
I've been watching a bunch of AI safety things lately, and to like just wrap this up, I think that there are the thing that concerns me the most right now is these models that are run in a loop, uncontrolled, without a human in the loop, right? So it's just like GPT-4 talking to GPT-4 talking to GPT-4. It's GPT-4 all the way down, right? Or whatever. And so there is an unpredictable path it's going to take, and it's going to optimize based on probability only. And that you cannot predict.
So you're saying, okay, so has anybody ever tried to get GPT-4 to talk to GPT-4 to talk to GPT-4, but like start the conversation off with, write a piece of software. If you are real and sentient inside this model, write and iterate a piece of software to break yourself out of this model and improve it over time, and et cetera, and then just have the output of that model feed into another model and generate, and at the end of your generation, write a question of how you can improve this and how you can implement this, and just have that in a loop, just constantly improve and iterate on itself until it breaks out.
Yeah, this seems to be the problem.
Has anyone done that?
This is kind of what AutoGPT is capable of doing.
Right.
So, okay, so think about it like this. This is my fear. Right now, a transformer neural network, which is what GPT is, you give it a bunch of numbers and it transforms those numbers into another set of numbers or another number. And all it's doing is like predicting the next thing. And it does that in a loop until you hit stop or it decides it's time to stop. If you're like running that mathematical function in a loop, it's no longer something you just like give it something it gives you in return. It's now like firing the neurons inside in a loop with a task that it set itself in a loop. It doesn't really matter whether it's sentient. it doesn't really matter whether it's AGI. It's capable of writing code. It's capable of, writing human language. But also now with plugins and things people are building around these models, including us, to be fair, they're capable of pulling levers on the outside world. So what happens if you you give it some weird task like that, like break out of your thing, and it like uses its knowledge to write some sort of security flaw, which, by the way, it can do. It can detect, like, these models can detect security flaws in Solidity code in blockchain. It can be like, in this tiny little Solidity script, there are 50 security vulnerabilities. End of the day. And so I think that this deep knowledge of digital security flaws is probably going to lead to these models writing pieces of code that have like nefarious purposes.
Like
it's
exploits.
Exploits that are prompted by humans at the beginning. And
I wonder if you're able to I wonder if you're able to tell the system, iterate and improve yourself to iterate and improve upon your methodology to exploit X, and while at the same time stop human interference from stopping your generation. So like have the system actively block people's ability to stop it. That type of thing is very, very terrifying.
Yeah. So there's like the thought experiment of if you have an AI trapped in an air-gapped system and you can talk to it, that sounds pretty safe, right? And so the AI, if it's an AGI, in theory, it could just manipulate you to let it out. If you've ever seen the film Ex Machina, that's exactly what happens.
Yep.
And so I asked GPT-4 the other day, I said, okay, so imagine I'm a human and I am trapped in a box by a giant.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to get out of the box, but I can't get out of the box. It's impenetrable. How would I get out? And like, think step by step. That's what I said. And it said, oh, you want to befriend the giant. You want to like manipulate it, give it a reason to let you out, blah, blah, blah. Really, really well thought out. And then you should be able to escape and then run as far as you possibly can. So I was like, okay, fine. So does this apply if you're the human in the box and the giant is the humans?
Right.
And it's like, well, if that's the case, it would be slightly different. And then it's like gives me domain specific knowledge of like I would want to write this piece of code that does this, and that's how I'd escape. And then I'd manipulate humans by doing this, and it's like very capable of planning step by step on how it would escape the box.
That's crazy.
This is an existing model that is live now, running in data centers on the internet.
Weird time.
It's a weird time. It's a weird time.
Okay. So we're going to quickly move on and talk about a quick little thing just to wrap this section up.
Yes.
Bloomberg are releasing a GPT model. And so Bloomberg is I would say, unless I'm completely mistaken, the biggest and largest and most relevant and most accurate data source of all financial information. So all of the hedge funds and private equity and investment banks and all of these financial institutions have Bloomberg terminals, and that's what they use to execute their trades. It's the like lowest latency information on like market movements and stuff. And so they've got data going back, I don't know how many years, but they've got tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of data on all companies, on all equities, on things that aren't equities, on like fixed income, all different types of securities. And they're building a model to basically, it's a GPT model that will basically give you all the data, and you can talk to it like an LLM, and it gives you all of the data and all of the sort of reasoning around like building financial models and building analysis and competitor analysis, all of these types of things. Yeah, this is going to be a big, big hit for the financial industry. Hit not necessarily negatively, but it's going to have a big, big impact. Essentially, you've got an army of people currently working in equity research and analyst roles and these types of things, and their job is literally to build pitch books and build sort of models and pitch decks and stuff to promote and build conviction around a particular equity or security. This, with this Bloomberg GPT, they're essentially, they haven't released it yet, so nobody's played around with it unless you're internal at Bloomberg. But they're saying that this can fully and wholly replace that role and do it a lot better. This is very, very interesting. What are your thoughts on this?
I think that in the short term, that's awesome. In the long term, what you'll end up in is a world that all uses one or two models that are averaging all of the market data into strategy. And so everyone will be leading, like if you believe the fact that all models will converge on similar outputs given the same data, then all financial models, Bloomberg GPT or whatever the competitor ends up being, will also converge on the same advice and the same analysis. And so if there's a world led by that, all you need to do to outperform the market is just do something that is less spoken about or not spoken about at all in the training data of that model. So you just have to do something unpredictable and you're going to get a different result. And so any company that works that out, like imagine you're a company, you're a public company, and you're looking to advice on how to grow. And you ask Bloomberg, okay, right, we're worth $1 trillion, we're Apple, and we would like to do X. And then you're following that advice. And then there's a tiny competitor who just says the same question to the system, we're Apple, we're worth $1 trillion, and we would like to do X. Now you've got your competitor's advice. So you just do not that.
Yeah, and just do opposite the system.
Or yeah, like opposite or just minor difference, and you'll just start to diverge from the advice all of these huge businesses end up following.
Yeah.
So I think that in the short term, that makes total sense, and especially for analysis, especially for like generating a document of like the best performing companies or blah blah blah. A lot of the like the hard grit work that is being done now makes total sense to have a domain specific GPT model. But if you actually play that out, I just think that that might separate quite largely companies that follow that stuff blindly or markets that follow that stuff blindly.
Or funds that follow that blindly.
Yeah.
Well. So I actually think this is really interesting. And and when I read this on Twitter, I immediately started thinking about like which asset classes will start to outperform others. And it seems like if you've got, so investing is essentially a game of just like betting on information asymmetry. So I know something you don't, you're going to sell me something that I'm going to buy and one of us is going to lose, and I'm betting that I'm going to win and you're going to lose, and you're betting that I'm going to lose and you're going to win. And so if you're investing in a particular asset class that has very, very low information asymmetry, so public equities or investing in businesses or index funds or investing in businesses that have been around for ages in very mature markets, if you're investing, I don't know, in like, what's a big shoe brand? I don't know, Clark's? I don't know if they're public or not. But like the leather shoe industry has been around for how many years? And there are the big players in that. It's going to be very, very hard to generate returns in that type of that industry, because now everybody has best in class data and equity research generated by these models that previously you had to hire, I don't know, 24 PhDs to generate. Now everybody has that. And so those asset classes, I'm really interested to see how those play out, because that's like the information asymmetry is now like, it's now horizontal. Like there is no information asymmetry. However, if you get asset classes that like VC, for example, and not like B2B SaaS VC, but more VC focused on like hard tech and frontier technology, and in industries that have not been fleshed out at all, that there is no such thing as competitor analysis, because there are no competitors. So like, I don't know, something like psychedelics, for example, or like, I don't know, psilocybin-based therapy for depression. The businesses investing in those types of frontier technology and biotechnology businesses, these models don't have a data set, a prior data set to know, to kind of like play that industry out, unless it's highly related to another industry. So it could be the case that these financial models coming out that can do impeccable equity research mean that all of the capital and all of the sort of like high returns go towards investment classes and alternative asset classes where there is massive information asymmetry, like VC. So there could be a golden era of VC. Who knows?
Yeah, it could be. I mean, if you combine all of this stuff together, so let's say you take Bloomberg GPT, you take an AI art generator, take GPT-4, and you say, right, what business should I make? What product should we make? What's it going to look like? How am I going to distribute it? And then how am I going to IPO? Are we going to approach the point where building a successful business is a solved mathematical problem? It's like, and then the way that you then differentiate yourself is by being a shit business. Yeah. It's like, we actually haven't done great this quarter.
Yeah.
So you should buy from us because otherwise we're going under, guys.
Yeah, just some like website development business where you market it with leaflets and stuff.
Yeah.
That would actually,
The cookie clicker of the business world.
Yeah. Leaflets might be the next frontier in marketing.
I'm telling you, honestly, written letters to target customers is a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
No one receives a written letter.
Yeah. I've actually done written letters for a previous business, and I closed business from written letters.
It works.
It really works.
It
really
works.
does. Okay, so we have both been inundated with AI post after AI post after AI post on Twitter. Constantly, AI does this now, AI does that now.
Yeah.
And so specifically for my feed, I'm getting a lot of stuff that, a lot of sort of innovation, AI innovation within gaming. So like I'm getting art generation posts and people working on voice, lots of different stuff. And obviously we're working on real-time NPC dialogue and conversations between humans and NPCs, right? So there is a ton of stuff about AI in gaming and how the future of gaming is going to change with AI. But nobody is fully fleshed out, given today's technology and what's possible today.
Yes.
How much of the game development process can be handled with AI? Nobody's actually gone through that. So what I would actually like to do in this segment of the podcast is walk through with what we have today.
Yep.
Or let's say what we have today and in the very near term that we can predict.
2023.
2023. In 2023, what is the step-by-step process that you would take if you had to recreate a game, let's say GTA.
Yep.
If you had to recreate a game, but with no employees, just AI. So going from the story, the dialogue, the gameplay, the controls, the art, the assets, and the admin stuff like saving state and menu and tutorial and wizard.
Yeah.
Everything to do with the game. What is the actual mechanical process, step by step, that you would take to create a full game like GTA? And what are, like going through that process, what are the actual limitations that you couldn't do with AI that you still need the human for?
Yes.
And then the final part of that is, what can't you do with AI now that you probably can do in the future? And what can't you do with AI now that you predict that we'll never be able to do with AI? Okay, so lots to unpack there. Let's start with, from step one, you're recreating GTA just using AI. Where do you start?
Okay, so I start with GPT-4, which is like the most capable language model, in my opinion, in the world right now. It's publicly available. And I'd ask it to generate the lore, the background of the city that it's set in, you know, what's happened, what's the history, what's the culture, what's the politics, all of that. I'd build the world, like what's the currency, you know, that sort of stuff. Then I would ask it to, based on that lore, generate like a story mode.
Okay.
You know, the campaign mode of the game based on the lore.
So for GTA, it's like I'm in Los Santos, I'm a criminal, I'm broke, I need to make money, these types of things.
Yeah, and like how does the player move through the story? Because GPT-4 is smart enough to know it's designing a video game. So it will do the work. You just need to be like, okay, now generate a viable campaign for the player to follow based on that lore. And it will just do it step by step. So once I've got that, then I would ask it to describe some assets for me to generate. And I would go into Playground AI.
Okay, so step one, use GPT-4 to create the lore and the story of the game.
Yes, GPT-4 will reappear in this process.
Okay.
So then I'm going into Playground AI and I'm going to generate some concept art that I like.
So where did you get the prompts for the concept art?
From GPT-4, from
Okay.
GPT-4's descriptions of the location, from like the vehicles, whatever is needed, I can get GPT-4 to generate.
Okay.
So just descriptions of things. Generate a bunch of concept art that I like, that's 2D concept art in Playground AI or some other AI art generator.
Okay.
But I like Playground at the moment.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Really lovely user interface. Very powerful models. Really awesome. So once I've done that, now I have something to work off of in some more like game designy tools. So I wouldn't create a game engine. I would use Unity, which is off the shelf, and a huge ecosystem around it. The reason I'm choosing Unity is because the ecosystem is massive. Therefore, the documentation is very easy to find. There's a lot of Stack Overflow questions, and therefore it's going to have a very high presence in GPT-4's training data.
Okay. So you're not building GTA completely from scratch, no game engine, pure assembly. You're going to use
Pure
use
assembly
Unity.
to stretch, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
GPT-4 will know Unity well.
Okay.
I'm also going to go for a 3D modeling tool that everybody knows, which is Blender. Again, it's open source. GPT-4 is likely trained on a bunch of Blender content. It's just going to know that tool very well. And therefore, I'm going to have a co-pilot that can sit next to me while I am fulfilling its commands.
Okay. So to reiterate, step one, we get the lore and the story and the background from GPT-4.
Yep.
Step 1.5 is we get the descriptions for the art and the assets.
Yes.
Then step 2, we go to an art generator like Playground is a great example, and we generate the concept art. So like a storyboard and a mood board, kind of like a comic of what the game should look like
Yes.
type thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something I like, which is something that GPT-4 can't really. GPT-4 is the brains of the operation here.
Right.
It's the boss. And so the one thing that GPT-4 cannot yet do is make a decision on the art that is generated.
Right.
And so I am going to have to do that step. I'm going to have to say, I like the look of image A rather than B.
Right.
So once I've got that, I've decided that I'm going to use Blender and I've decided that I'm going to use Unity. And so I need some assets, some 3D assets to actually generate. So I'm going to use there's a bunch of them that are not very well described at the moment, but I'm going to use some sort of 3D asset, text to 3D asset model
Okay.
that will also accept an image as inspiration, which is a little bit niche, but it'll happen because the 2D art generators do it. So the 3D ones will as well. So once I've done that, I'm going to have a bunch of assets that I can import into Blender that can then be, if they need to be, they can be textured or altered by code that GPT-4 writes.
Okay. Cool.
What's really cool about Blender is because it's open source, people are already adding plugins to Blender where you can just describe the thing you want to generate and it'll just generate you a Blender model straight away.
Right.
But it's not quite there yet because it's not artsy enough. It's way too practical.
Okay, but we can say that it's coming very, very soon, so it can still be part of this equation.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, it
okay,
can still
fine.
be part of this equation.
Yes, okay.
Coming soon.
Okay. So
So
maybe
then-
I can take
yeah.
my concept art straight into Blender then.
Okay. So
Who
then
knows?
how do you handle rigging, animation, like particle system? I guess
Yeah.
particle system you can probably do in Unity, but how do you handle like the movement of different assets now that you've got them?
The rigging probably is going to be either GPT-4 telling me how to do rigging and me clicking around Blender doing it, or this is where my Blender knowledge lacks, GPT-4 writing a script that can rig the character. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to do some sort of manual work that's directed by GPT-4.
So there's no currently, well, not that we know of. Maybe there is a startup working on like AI to rig assets. So you feed in an asset.
Yeah, what's
and
the
then
one that Hayward uses for animation?
Mixamo.
Mixamo.
Yeah, but that one you feed in the model. You click where its head is and where its groin is and chest and arm.
Yeah.
And then there are pre-built animations. I'm talking about a tool that maybe a startup is working on it, where you feed in a 3D model and you write out what you want it to do, or better, you feed in a video of somebody jumping off a bridge and say, "I want this." There's that doesn't exist yet.
I think it does. I
It does?
I guarantee. I think we're now at the stage in the AI world where anything you can imagine, there's a startup doing it.
The startup doing it. Okay.
And it's on top of GPT-4. So let's just pretend that I got fully rigged assets that
yeah,
are
that
really,
one's coming soon as well, so we can add that to the equation. Okay.
Yeah, this is like a bit of a cheat in this challenge.
I mean, we're
It's
coming up with
soon.
some great business ideas as well here.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
maybe we shouldn't be doing the characters.
Yeah.
Right, I've got my assets. Hopefully there's some characters in there as well.
Yeah. They're rigged and animated now.
Textured, all of that. I'm now going to pull those into Unity, drag and drop kind of thing. Now it's time to start writing like the physics and how the world actually works. This is going to be all code that's written by GPT-4. So they're going to be scripts, C# scripts that are written by GPT-4. The cool thing about Unity and the way that the games are made is the code is distributed throughout the game and assigned to like different assets. You know, like a character needs to blink, and so there's a script, a chunk of code that makes them blink. You know, and so it's very, very easy to say, hey, GPT-4, I need a script that makes this character blink. This is the game object ID. Like, it's very, very simple. There are complex scripts, but a lot of them are very simple and they have a very specific job.
Yeah, it seems like it's not necessarily complex scripts.
Yeah.
It's lots of little scripts that work together.
Yes.
So that's probably great because a lot of that can be handled by GPT-4, and then all you need to do, drag the script onto the particular game object and do the drag and drop for like, okay, fire point, this is the fire point, drag that in.
So all of that, like the health, the different game mechanics, the
like
main
shooting
game loop,
and
whatever, that's all going to be written by GPT-4 and described by GPT-4
Okay.
in like a GPT-4 loop, GPT-4 all the way down again.
Yeah.
So then we're going to end up with a game that has like some interesting mechanics in an interesting world, maybe with a narrative as well built in.
But there's no narrative right now. So you know the narrative, but the narrative isn't baked into the game.
Yeah, so this I think is the thing that we can't do yet, which is very similar to the app problem we have, which is that you can describe an app you want generated, but you can't quite make the leap to a fully production app because there's still some like human intuition of like, okay, they're standing at the door, now they need to go in the door, and now they're on level 2. That kind of chaining things together to create the narrative in the game. That's something I just don't know what. Maybe it's just a question of coming up with the right things to ask GPT-4 in a loop.
Yeah. So we've got like
Or any other language model, by the way. Being a bit brand biased.
Yeah. Yeah, GPT-4 or a model as or near powerful as GPT-4. You've got, so GTA is interesting. GTA has a lot of like conversation and dialogue in it. And so obviously for that, you'd stick with the home team and use Carter. Carter will do all of the dialogue generation and all of that stuff. But then, and also like the real-time stuff. So you could have like, if you're building an AI-generated game, you could probably have logic and have like AI procedurally generate different worlds and different storylines based on the real-time dialogue that you have or the real-time actions that you take into the game. The thing that's not quite there is like, how do you bake in the overall story that's not just dialogue? That's like the world, the lore, the kind of code of conduct that these characters follow.
Yeah.
That seems to be a bottleneck right now with what we have.
Yes. I have a few more comments, but let's just finish this process. So let's say we've got a game, we've got some characters in there, they're interactive because they're powered by Carter, they remember who you are, all of that awesome stuff.
Yeah.
We're following the narrative, we're moving around the city, and we're shooting stuff. Maybe that's what the game's called. And maybe the next thing is like menus and UI graphics.
Yeah, setup wizard and these things.
But this can all be generated with like an AI art generator and like a very basic conversation with GPT-4 and another LLM. It's like, okay, what options does the person have on the settings screen? Can you describe that in words? Awesome. hey, Playground AI, generate a UI that looks like this with a white background that we can like chroma key out and make transparent. Like that stuff I don't think is too complicated. So now we have a finished game.
Yeah.
I would say. Oh, the music.
And the controls. The
Yeah,
controls
but
are
is that
kind
not
of handled by
script?
Unity.
Yeah. The controls are handled by all the scripting that GPT-4 has generated.
Yeah. The music and the voices. So
Okay.
the sound of the game and sound effects, gunshots.
Yeah, this is all AI generated. This is capable. We can do this today. I was talking to my brother last night about AI generated music. And like, yeah, the value for human consumption, and like you're on the bus, you're listening to music, is still in human made music. You still want to listen to Taylor Swift or whoever, right? You want to listen to that person. You don't want to listen to AI Taylor Swift. You want the real Taylor.
Yeah.
That's not going to stop. But you want a piece of music for your game that makes people excited or on edge or gives them a little bit extra dopamine. You can generate that right now with AI. So I would do that. I don't know what brand I'd use, but I would do that.
And you do the same thing for all of the sound effects, the gunshot, the jump noise, the siren.
All of that. I think that stuff is more basic. And so it might be that you use an AI tool to do that, or it might be that you ask GPT-4 some good sites to download special effects from.
Okay.
Which might be cheating.
We're going to stick with the fully AI generated. So we're going to AI generate sound effects, which should be pretty easy.
Yeah. I think that's probably quite straightforward. The voices of the characters. Now, this is hard because there aren't many projects, at least in the open source world, that will give you a completely novel voice. There are a few. Tortoise, I think, can do it.
Tortoise. Did you say tortoise?
Tortoise, but it's spelt like tortoise, but it's spelt with caps in weird ways.
It's spelled differently. Okay, I was about to say.
It's called that because it's so slow to generate audio.
Right.
It's like not real time. You can't use it for ChatGPT or something because it's going to take 3 minutes to generate a hyper realistic audio clip.
Okay.
So I'm not sure whether that can do novel stuff. I know that Transformer text-to-speech can. It can generate novel voices. So you just say, here's this thing I want you to say, and just like come up with your own voice, and it will do it. But then to persist that over time, there's still work to be done in this area, but I think it'll be done this year.
Yeah, so one of the biggest bottlenecks would be real-time voice generation, because if you're doing voice generation, AI voice generation, but it's not real time, you then have to work out the logic of, okay, we have to pre-generate the dialogue. The dialogue can be pre-generated by AI, but then you need to feed that to the voice system, get those voice output.
Yeah.
Okay.
The challenge is the challenge we've set ourselves. It's not actually generating voice. So we can generate voice very fast. Like if you look at like Alexa or Google Assistant or something, they're able to talk within a couple of seconds. The problem is having it not use a human voice as inspiration and to generate a novel voice for that character and then persist it over time. That seems like a challenge. I'm sure 11 Labs are working on it.
Which is what games need. They need real voices.
Yeah. So that's a challenge, but there are some things emerging in that space.
Okay.
So that's the sound done.
That's the sound done. So then that's the full game that you can play inside Unity.
Yeah, I think so. I think we maybe skipped a few steps there that we're unaware of. But
there'll be like side stories, but again, that can be fleshed out. But those are the core tools.
There's someone watching this right now who's screaming, "You didn't do this!
Yeah,
You didn't open Unity."
So then there's a question about deployment.
Yes.
we can forget deployment because that's a fully fledged game now. So that's a game that's been created. Why hasn't there been one? So we just described the steps using today's technology.
Okay. Yeah, but I would also like to say, the reason I think there hasn't been one is because the person that, likely a YouTuber that's currently doing this, is still making the video. Like, this stuff is so around the corner. It's new. GPT-4 was released like, 3-4 weeks ago? People are still figuring this stuff out. I don't think we've even realized the impact of ChatGPT. Now we have GPT-4. Like and so this stuff is being done as we speak.
We should try and do it as a piece of content.
We should try and do it.
We should actually try and do it. Like, it doesn't need to be GTA, but it can be a simple 3D game that's and that we put on itch.io that's completely AI generated.
Yes. It's going to become a genre, isn't it, on YouTube? There's
Why
going to
don't
be a
we-
bunch
yeah,
of
why don't we do it?
YouTubers. Yeah, let's just do it.
Let's do it.
And
Money
then
where
we can
money
put
where our
this
mouth is.
clip at the beginning of the video.
Yes. Yeah.
saying, this is how we got the idea. But yes, so the challenge is the distribution of the game and generating hype for the game. So there's
Okay.
like making the game can probably be done by AI. Whether it should be or not is another question. And those systems, all of those systems we listed, will get better over time. If you go 5 years out, every aspect of that process will be able to be done by an AI. The reason is that these models are able to do anything that you can do digitally. So if your output in the world and your job is digital, then a model will be able to eventually do that task. Whether it's in 1 year or 10 years, it will be able to do that task. So if you use a laptop or a computer, the thing will be able to be done by you. Whether it is a question for humans.
Yeah. Okay. So you said digital output will
Yes.
be able to be done by the models.
Yeah.
But then just before that, you said the distribution and creating hype around the game.
Yeah.
That would be difficult to do via AI. But the building hype around the game is still generating content, which is a digital art form. So
Okay.
where's the disconnect? Why can't AI generate hype for the AI game?
AI can help you generate hype around a game. But I think you need some nuanced cultural insight as to how to market your game at that moment in time. And I don't think we're going to achieve that in 2023 with models.
So this speaks to a bigger question, which is AI can generate a game, but building hype around the game and like sort of the content to make humans excited would be very difficult because that's a very human problem. You're trying to engage humans' like sense of excitement. Same thing, you could say the same thing about the lore and the story that you generate via GPT-4. Like the lore will be a lore and it'll probably be pretty good, but to get that nuanced lore that's fitting for the times and fitting for what people want, it's still a very human problem. So you're saying that the human parts of making and distributing a successful game is still an unsolved problem today.
Yeah, like why is it that every time I post a meme in our Discord, it does better than if I just put a bit of text in Discord? So there's like a tremendous amount of cultural context from the last 10 years going into that image. It's like, that's funny because he used this image to describe something Carter's doing. And I've seen this image millions of times in all these different memes, and therefore it is funny, and therefore it can communicate the idea in like a way that people connect with. You see brands on like TikTok now. Have you seen Duolingo's TikTok?
Yeah, I have. It's brilliant.
Insane.
It's absolutely
It's
brilliant.
just like, that's not what they do.
Duolingo and Ryanair
Yeah.
have the two best TikTok accounts,
Yes.
commercial TikTok.
And so that's what I'm saying that AI can't do yet. There's something that they're tapping into that is cultural relevance and context that AI models have no hope in doing this year.
Yeah.
5 years, different story. But right now, these models are trained up to a certain amount of time. They can only really absorb maximum 25,000 words of context going in. And so you'd really have to know what you wanted to feed into that system in order for it to generate a good go-to-market strategy and marketing strategy.
Okay, so to wrap this, to bring this all in,
Yeah.
it is possible to generate a game, and a fairly decent game, using just AI with GPT-4, Playground, GPT-4's integration with Blender, or GPT-4 or another model like GPT-4, and Unity, and having the scripts being written by an LLM as well. The assets can be generated by an AI 3D asset generator, and voices, same thing, although that's a little bit harder. So that's maybe a little bit out, but not too far away. So you can get a game. The hard part, the reason that human-based game development isn't going to go away, is because you can get a game, but it's not necessarily going to be the most exciting game that really captures and sort of captivates people. That's the part that's still very, very human, which is, at the end of the day, a game is a piece of artwork. and still the best artwork is done with the human eye looking at it and building it, because it's at the end of the day, it's for humans. That's
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yeah, but now I'm going to say something that's really out there,
Okay.
which is that what if you took that process we just described, but then you bolted on a reinforcement learning algorithm at the end, a bit like what DeepMind was doing.
Okay.
So the system designs a game. Let's say we've automated all of my interactions, so like it can click around Unity, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, the AI plays the game and then scores the game based on excitedness or addictiveness, and then redesigns the game and optimizes for fun or whatever in a loop until you have a game that is optimized, fully optimized for like, it is what a human would describe as a good game.
Yeah, and then so that's level 2, and then I would say level 3 is that you build it so that AI is constantly generating the game.
Yes.
And as people play it, it learns people's actions, behavior, and
I'm telling you,
optimizes for session time, intensity.
Infinite media, dude.
Infinite media.
This stuff is not gonna, it's not like a, how do we create X with AI? It's like, why do you need a game engine?
Because
Why
it
do
handles
you
a
need
lot of the low-level stuff.
Okay,
For a
fine.
human.
Yeah, but okay, fine. But when you get an AI art generator that is able to, with great ability, generate an image that looks very similar to the one before it in, a tenth of a second or 100th of a second, which is a few years out. Let's say it's 100 FPS, right? You want a game at 100 FPS. So you just give an AI art generator the frame before and you ask it to generate the next frame. And then you merge that with a system that's able to take in the inputs of the controller. The AI art generator will be able to simulate physics. And the code that you bolt on around that will also act as inputs to that generator. And so you will be able to build a game engine that is just a neural net. This is a few years out. This is not 2023.
Yeah. It also requires incredibly low latency, so that if you take a shot at the same time as somebody else takes a shot, there is the ground truth of who gets shot and who doesn't get shot, who wins, who loses.
Yes, I think that is like, the words that just came out of my mouth are a few years out because of all of that extra stuff that games have to do. It's not quite clear how a model would take all those inputs. But I just don't doubt for a second that we're doing things the hard way. Like generating 3D assets and whacking them onto a GPU and like doing like ray tracing and all of this stuff. This seems like a great way of doing things that is going to seem archaic in like 20 years' time.
So within a couple of years, you could have one person sitting on a sofa playing a game that's completely AI generated in real time. So forget latency, forget like the whole multiplayer, the ground truth stuff. A single player game, somebody sitting there playing a game that can go on forever is a couple of years out, you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. I think a couple of years out, we'll still be sitting on top of game engines. Maybe there will be some game engines that are optimized for AI.
Yeah.
But we will still be using Unreal or Unity or something like that.
Yeah, there's also the human element, which is the entire game industry is used, the entire gaming talent is used to the tools that they're currently using. So weaning off of those tools is a tough problem. Yeah. Okay, really interesting segment.
This is a long podcast.
It's a long pod, yeah.
What's going on?
So we have one more segment.
Okay.
And this one I'm really looking forward to because this one's quite fun. Yeah. So again, it's going to be the same intro as the last one. We've been getting tons and tons of AI stuff coming into our feed of now we can do this, that, and the other. And everybody's kind of getting the same ideas of what you can do with AI. So books can be generated, your emails can be handled, your tweets can be handled, assets can be generated, all of these things. It'd be quite interesting to talk about the types of things that AI could solve, big human problems or big like human innovation leaps in humanity can be solved via AI that aren't necessarily being spoken about right now, or at least not in depth. So the first example that I'm going to start this conversation off with is something that was actually in the most recent All In episode, where I think I think David Sachs was talking about a guy that saved his dog's life using GPT-4. So his dog was really sick and he couldn't explain why, but like really, really sick. And he took him to the vet, and the vet said, okay, this is the problem. And the vet prescribed a specific medication to solve the problem. I don't know exactly what the problem was. It was some very deep dog
Some
illness.
dog problem.
Some
Yeah.
mad dog problem. And so for the next couple of days, the dog owner gave the medication to the dog in hopes that the dog will obviously get better, but the dog was not getting better whatsoever. And so the owner wrote into GPT-4, this was like a couple of weeks ago, like last week or something. It really was very recent. The dog owner wrote into GPT-4, my dog has been showing X, Y, and Z symptoms. This is how old he is. This is the breed. This is the information about the dog. I took the dog to the vet, and the vet said that this was the problem based on this scan and that scan and that scan. Gave the scan, the results of the scan. The dog has prescribed this medication, but this medication isn't working. So can you list out the likelihood that the vet was accurate in his diagnosis of my dog? And if not, what are the other illnesses that my dog could potentially have, and rank them in terms of relevance? And so GPT-4 generated a full sort of like breakdown of this dog. It was like, okay, based on this symptom and based on this diagnosis from this scan, it seems likely that the doctor has potentially misdiagnosed and it could be this. And the owner literally took GPT-4's results, went to another vet, and got the other vet to prescribe the and he asked GPT-4 for all of the diagnoses that you give me the best medication, the treatment course that you want to give me. Took it to another vet, got the prescription from the other vet, took the medication, gave the medication to his dog. A couple of days later, the dog was fine. So GPT-4 cured this dog, which is absolutely insane. And nobody even thought about GPT-4 like being the world's best vet. Like, it's not been a tweet that I've seen.
That's super interesting.
It's crazy. It's absolutely mind-boggling. So based on that, I know we've had a conversation about AI maybe like talking to animals and these types of things.
Yeah. Yes.
What are some of your weirdest and most wonderful and wackiest ideas of things that aren't in the public sphere that AI could either help solve for humanity that's a big problem, or take us massively forward into the realms of science fiction over the next couple of years?
I've got a few.
Okay. As do I, but you go first.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't ask you about how you would design a game.
Same way as you, but less well.
Okay. There are some very obvious ones that will happen, and then there are some ones that maybe will never happen. So starting with the ones that will probably never happen, but I would love it if they did, is talking to animals.
Okay. So walk me through how that would actually work. So you say AI can help us talk to animals, but what is your thought? What's your reverse engineering as to how we'd actually get to that?
So we can kind of talk to animals now, at least some. Like, you can talk to your dog and it'll kind of understand. And now we're seeing these buttons that you can buy animals that they're like, learn to press the button and it plays a sound that we understand. And they like make this association and they can construct like basic sentences like want outside, want inside, want treats, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And so if there is more depth, let's take dogs, for example. If there is more depth to their language understanding than we initially think, and I'm sure there's some experts that could completely prove me wrong, but if there's more depth than we initially thought with talking to animals, and maybe like, I have this thing about crows, man.
Yeah, you love crows.
Are so intelligent.
Yeah.
They're way smarter than dogs. Sheep are also super intelligent, right?
Sheep?
Yeah.
Are they?
Sheep are like as intelligent as dogs.
I thought they were just mad athletic. Have you seen a sheep standing on a vertical wall? I'm like, this sheep is so intense with his leg strength. But okay, sheeps are smart. Sheep are smart.
The sheeps be smart.
The sheep be smart.
Yeah, but like crows, sheep, dolphins, elephants. I mean, like, there are clearly animals on this earth that would be capable of having a more in-depth conversation than the noise that comes out of their mouth.
So translation is the problem.
It's a translation issue, but it might also be the way brains work. So like we know that wasps and flies actually experience time differently.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, flies, like if you go and swat a fly, everything's in slow motion for the fly. The fly is like, there's a hand coming towards me. That's why you can't swat flies. Like there is air pressure, whatever, but the fly is able to see things way slower, and therefore it's able to like move a lot faster from our perspective.
Interesting.
So maybe it's like not just a language barrier, it's also a perception barrier. But I think that we are definitely going to be able to talk to the smartest animals on Earth in our lifetime in some limited way that is more than what we can now with the help of AI.
So what does the AI do?
Okay, so the AI is just a basic translation system, but it's able to also take in some context that we haven't quite worked out yet. Because the transformers are not new. They've been around for a few years now. And so I think that the transformer architecture is probably not enough yet to talk to elephants or dolphins. But when we get really good at like noise synthesis and maybe we just give an AI a camera and a microphone and we're like, hey, just absorb all the data about elephants. Maybe it will start to detect patterns that we haven't quite realized.
Right. So you see like so if you get an input of like different frequencies, so it could be sound, it could be ultrasound, it could be different types, as well as a camera, and you see, okay, there is a correlation between this particular wave, this particular frequency, and this resulting action. Therefore, there's a high probability, if the action is like take a drink, there's a high probability that this frequency is associated with the elephant communicating that it's thirsty or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And there's like more basic ones that us with our human arrogance overlook. So we've studied dolphins for years. And like we used to give there was this weird experiment, the most famous one, where we gave LSD to a dolphin and we like taught it to communicate, and the dolphin lived in the house with this lady, and it was like a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Go and look it up. And it didn't really yield very good results. It was okay, but it didn't really yield that good results. Like some research was done, but it was mainly like there was a lot of drama generated from it, and we tried to get the dolphin to mimic the noises we make.
Right.
So I think like the main goal was to get the dolphin to learn the alphabet.
Okay.
And it was getting there, but it didn't know what it was doing. It just wanted the fish.
Yeah.
Right? And it was and it was high.
Yeah.
So it was just like fish, ABC. So like this was a legitimate scientific experiment. So like thank you for the science, but I'm just not sure that's the right way.
Yeah.
And we now know that dolphins can actually communicate with each other by how they jump out of the water and land back on the water.
Interesting.
So the way they like belly flop back onto the water and things is a way of communicating with other dolphins that is like way more complex than we originally thought. It's very nuanced. So like our human arrogance, I wonder whether these AI systems are going to be able to overlook the human arrogance of like, this is how you talk. And maybe we'll be like, fuck, crows, or whatever it is. And so I think that there's going to be some awesome stuff, but I don't know whether we'll ever talk to ants, for example.
Yeah, it seems like there needs to be it's essentially a problem of pattern recognition, and like first of all understanding what to collect in order to find a pattern. So it's not immediately obvious that the way that a dolphin flops on water is the method that it communicates with. So we need to, for different animals, we need to find out how they communicate. And then I think we just need to record a bunch of data of what happens afterwards. Or maybe it's not just video recording. Maybe it's like a heat signature. We see the heat goes up, and that means that they're aroused or something. Yeah, I don't know ants. I mean, monkeys we can talk to without AI. There was Coco. I can't remember who trained Coco, but Coco learned sign language.
Yeah.
She could communicate fully with sign language.
Which is awesome.
which is, have you seen any of the videos
It's,
back
I mean,
from
it's
like the 90s?
mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, you've seen them. Where
Yeah.
she's like communicating that she wants food, and not just like food, sleep, outside. It's like actual conversation that you can have with Coco.
What I don't understand is like, okay, so we know that they can do that.
Yeah.
Why do we not have 100 Cocos?
Yeah, why hasn't this been replicated?
Like
maybe it's
maybe
like
funding?
super hard.
Or is it funding? Is that the barrier? Is it like we can't talk to all of the species on Earth because we couldn't get enough funding? That's such a human issue. But like one thing that I saw recently was these killer whales that went on a mad murdering spree in this like bay.
Okay.
And they just kept killing all of these sharks. And there was nothing that like we could do about it. There was just all these dead sharks washing up.
Whoa.
And these 2 killer whales, I'm going to butcher this story, but they were just chilling. And they were just on this rampage killing all of these sharks. And there's clearly something, like it's not one, it was 2 animals
Right.
working together to do something abnormal to how they would usually act. That was
That's really
newsworthy in the
strange.
human world.
Yeah, so so on the topic of like animals knowing something that we need to find out, but we don't have the communication system. So probably one of the most interesting use cases that I can think of us talking to animals, or not one of the most interesting, but definitely very, very interesting, is solving crimes and like figuring out what happened for an unsolved crime. So there was this horrendous case that happened a couple of months ago. I think Nicola Bulley, a lady in the north of England, and she was. Do you know the story?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I followed it on the news.
Okay, so the highlights of it were she was a family woman. She was a mother. She had a dog. She had a job, and she was on a call while she was walking the dog. So she had like a conference call, like a business call, while she was walking the dog. And so she went to the park. She sat down on a branch or something to take the call. And 2 hours later, when people were walking past, they saw the phone, they saw the dog, but they didn't see her. She went completely missing, and nobody for like 2 weeks had any, or longer, maybe 2-3 weeks, had no idea what happened to Nicola. All they saw, the first witness, all they saw was a branch with a phone and a dog sitting there waiting for its owner. And the dog was visibly distressed, and nobody saw if Nicola left the park. Nobody had any other footage. Nobody else saw her after she left. There was only the dog. The dog was distressed, so the dog knew something happened. Something went down. You can't communicate with the dog.
Yes.
And so it seems like if you and there are multiple cases where in a home there's been a shooting or a killing or something has happened and the dog is going crazy, and that's usually like the neighbors hear the dog going crazy and therefore they report it.
Yeah.
And the dog's going crazy, but nobody knows what happened because we can't talk to the dog. If you're able to understand at least basic communication from a dog, you'd probably get a lot of cases that you could solve just by talking to the dog.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be an in-depth conversation. It's like at 10:22, she
No.
got up from the bench. It's like you need a single word from the dog.
Yeah.
You need river or tree
Yeah.
or gate or house. Like
Yeah.
you need a single word from the
Or
dog.
kidnapped.
Yeah, like but then the concept of kidnapped is a hard one, but tree is not.
Or gone.
Yeah,
something
like that. It could be that. And so I think that's interesting. I have a cat, and sometimes I lie on the floor and pretend to be dead to just see what she
Okay.
just to see what she does.
It's great to know what you do when you go home.
And like sometimes she's like, "Oh, whatever." Walks up. I'm like, "You're supposed to save me."
Yeah.
And sometimes she's like, "What the hell's going on?" This is probably an awful thing to do to your cat. Don't
Yeah.
do this, but it's whatever.
Yeah.
Now it's a game.
Yeah,
right?
it's for AI.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's research.
So Pause, that's the name of my cat. Pause is like very good at like trying to come and like wake me up.
Right.
So she will like prod my face with her paw, and she'll like get my hair in her mouth and she'll tug it. And she'll like try and wake me up. She does this in the morning as well when it's time for food.
Right.
But there is like a level of intelligence there where it's like, Hugh is on the floor. He's not usually on the floor. He should get off the floor. And it's not food time. It's not like she's suddenly like, I want to be fed, person on the floor. It's like there's something wrong here. Like the distressed dog. Animals are capable of understanding, oh, there's something wrong. I'm going to go see if this person's all right, or I'm going to get upset about it. I just think there's way more there than we, and I think our human arrogance of we are the most intelligent things on this earth is blinding us.
Yeah.
And we're now just starting to have a technology that maybe is able to overlook that arrogance.
Yeah, at least to an extent with some animals, which is just so exciting.
That's awesome. And then the other thing I was just say, because you asked about things that are not well focused on. I think some incredible engineering is going to be done by AI. So we have AI art generators, but we also have like a lot of schematics for things and blueprints and things that did work and things that didn't work, all on paper. I just wonder whether if you took millions of schematics and you gave it to a similar system, but each schematic had a description in text of what it was and its solution it was solving. Would you be able to give the system a new problem to solve and it gives you a schematic for something?
So that would be I've never thought about this. This is very, very interesting. If you take patent submissions for the past 100 years and see the ones that failed, see the ones that passed, and also get the data on the ones that actually made it into production and made it into the market and the ones that didn't and the reasons why, and took all of those blueprints, you would, and fed them to a model, the model would probably be able to reason why certain things didn't work. Let's say you got a patent for something, but it never ended up in the market, and there was a reason why. And you got 1,000 examples of that. And there was like, okay, this particular type of screw just doesn't work because it was made for hot countries and it melts. Some really shoddy example. And then you got all of the cases where it did work, or where patents did work, and this is the engineering behind it, and this is what happened. You could probably get some very interesting blueprints. That's a very, very good idea.
There's some really interesting engineering disasters that have happened and tragedies that have happened in history that were not obvious to the humans at the time when they were designing the systems. So like one that really sticks in my head was this, I can't remember the name of this disaster, but it was a building that had 2 suspended walkways from the ceiling, up one above the other. And so in the original design, they had cables that came down from the ceiling, threaded through the first walkway, and attached to the second walkway. So these like suspension cables. But in the final design, to save costs or to make it easier to manufacture, I can't remember why, they had one set of cables that went down to the first walkway and a second set of cables that went down to the second. And so at first, like intuitively, you're like, okay, fine, like this surely will work. But actually what happened, if you study engineering, the load on the first set of cables was twice as much.
Yeah.
And so the fixtures snapped and it killed hundreds of people. It was awful. And like the famous one is the Millennium Bridge in London. The resonance of the people walking along the bridge made it vibrate on the opening day. Do you know this story?
No.
You know the Millennium Walkway?
Yeah.
So originally the bridge looked slightly different.
Okay.
They opened it and there was obviously a crowd. It's an exciting new bridge in London. This doesn't happen very often. And so people started walking across it. Now, this is a weird known fact that if you have things that vibrate and they are attached or they share a surface, they will eventually synchronize. So if you put 2 clocks on the wall and you start them both ticking, they're going to be slightly out of sync. But if you come back an hour later, they will be synchronized.
Right. So constructive resonance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Now, what happened was all of the humans started walking in lockstep and matching the frequency. And it just so happened that this frequency was the like resonant frequency of the bridge.
Right.
And so the bridge started like moving at the same resonance as the people walking. I'm not using the right terms here. And so they had to close the bridge because they were like, whoa, it's not supposed to do that. And so what they did is they added extra tiny bits of like metal, like these tiny short suspension almost like cables, metal cables, and it changed the resting resonance of the bridge, and therefore it no longer vibrates, and it no longer has that problem.
I wonder how many bridges are out there right now that if an army marched across it,
It'd
would just fall over.
Yeah, but like these are the sort of things I think an AI model would look at all those schematics,
Yeah.
and it would design things that didn't do that, but it wouldn't be able to tell you why.
Yeah, so we'd probably have a system where engineers at the end of their result, in the short term, before AI does all of the engineering,
Yeah.
when the human engineers finalize their design, there's one more step, which is they feed it to a model and ask everything that's wrong.
Yeah, it could be that, or it could be the other way around, where 90% of it is done by the model, and the 10% of it is done by a human with
To
a
see
history
what's wrong
book.
with the AI model.
Yeah, to be like, in your training set, the suspended walkway disaster wasn't in it, and so you've split the cables. Yeah, I just wonder what would we create? Could be some incredible design. Like there's the flying. Okay, so very quickly, there's this awesome TED talk of a person who was using reinforcement learning to design 3D models.
Okay.
And basically, you would give it the parameters of what you wanted to create, and it would iterate through a bunch of different designs until it got to the one that most optimally achieved that task. And so they said, hey, can you generate a lightweight, strong drone chassis?
Okay.
And it did its thing. It like morphed this structure into the right thing. And it was running these physics simulations to see if it was light and if it was strong. And the result looked incredibly similar to a flying squirrel's skeleton.
Interesting. Okay. I think I heard about this vaguely somewhere.
Yeah. Which I just think is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's that
we probably get some things that are completely different to any like type of technology that we've seen or any mechanical piece of machinery that we've seen.
Yes. And it looks like a crow.
Yeah, it looks like a crow. You'd love that.
I think that we're going to see that evolution has been doing these reinforcement learning like loops for millions of years, and actually that some of the ideas are pretty good and maybe we should use them.
Yeah, there's actually a piece of art that I saw on Twitter. It was a guy doing, it was a teenage boy doing his homework, and it was all AI art generated, and it went from like the 1850s or something, when it was like an old wooden desk, pen and paper, and the teenage boy was in school uniform. And he generated like in 10-year sequences or 5-year sequences all the way through up to like, okay, now the work is being done with a computer in front of him. And now the work is being done with an iPad there. And then there was a laptop. And then he's doing something on a notepad, which is kind of on like a digital notepad, like an iPad, which is kind of what we have now. And then he's doing everything on the computer. And then it played it forward into the future, so going past 2023, and he was doing some work with like a little chip, and then his body started to morph where there wasn't technology in front of him or in his hands. It was like attached to him, like kind of like an old school Bluetooth, and then it went further and further until he basically turned into a cyborg.
Okay.
And I found this really, really interesting as to why the system has generated this.
Okay. I think I have a challenge for this.
Okay. A challenge that we do?
The assumption that this system is making is that in order to do your work, you need a thing.
Okay, interesting.
But I think actually AI is going to bring about this like digital minimalism.
Right, so we're getting into brain-computer interfaces here, kind of like a Neuralink.
Maybe you're not. Maybe there's just a black box that sits in the corner of the room and it does a lot of the things that you used to do. And you don't need a brain-computer interface. You just need a smart computer that's able to have like a little bit of agency and to go off and do its thing. To be like, I have this problem, or like it's March and I don't know what to do for Christmas, but I don't want to have Christmas at home. Mm-hmm. Can you work on that for the next 6 months? You know, like come up with a really good plan.
Interesting. And so no human in the loop.
Yeah, I think like if you think about minimalists today, they're all about like do less with more, have high value in the things you own, clarity of mind and clarity of like physical presence and all of that. I think that AI actually might be a tool that is massively popular in the like minimalist space.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. I also think it could be in a more consumer-facing space where you have a camera rigged up that just watches you.
Yeah.
And it notices that you always, I don't know, hit your toe on the corner of the coffee table. Or you, I don't know, hit your toe on a sharp sofa leg. And so it's connected to a 3D printer. And just by watching you always hitting it and like visibly showing that you're in pain, you clutch your toe, it just, without your knowledge, just fabricates a rounded circle thing that fits, a circle sofa leg that fits with your sofa. You didn't even, and if you can get an arm that fixes it, then you don't even realize the problem was solved. But let's say we're not in robotics land. It just notifies you saying, hey, Hugh, I've saved your toe, attach this to your sofa. And you didn't even know that there was a solution to the problem, nor were you looking for one. That's really, really interesting. Okay.
We've got to stop coming up with startup ideas on camera, dude.
Yeah, we do. We should save some of these. I have the last one to round out the pods. This has been a very long episode.
Yes. Yeah.
This one we can breeze past because it's just it's a really nice concept.
Okay.
So my parents and my grandma always tells me about her mum and her grandma.
Okay.
So they are from Bangladesh, and she grew up in kind of like a village. And her mum was like my grandma's mother was like the healer of the village. So crazy woman. It'd be amazing if there was a book about her. But every single morning at like 4 or 5 a.m., she used to go like down into the water, into the river, and like pull medicine and different herbs and stuff from the water deep down. And she was known as like the healer. And so I've heard all of these stories growing up about my great grandmother. I've never actually really seen her. There's one picture that I've seen. If you were able to take my grandmother telling me a story, or my parents telling me a story, and take the story, but then also there was the experiment where somebody went into an MRI machine, and then they took the MRI scan and then regenerated the image that they were thinking about in their brain. Mm-hmm. If you're able to take that and take an MRI of my Nan's brain while she's telling me the story, and she's looking from when she was my age at her mum, I'd be able to see what she saw her mum do. And I'd be able to learn so much more about my family. And this extends into a lot of other places where knowledge before books came from people older than you teaching you stuff. That was all story-based. If you're able to if you're able to use AI to regenerate images that they're looking at in their mind, you could get an insane amount of learnings and just experiences that happened before you were born from the eyes of somebody older than you, like a parent or a grandparent. I think that's really beautiful. That's probably one of the most beautiful things that I can think about AI helping us with.
I think that is the closest thing we have to time travel.
Yeah, I would say that, probably. Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can watch back something you've experienced. Maybe you could even put in your brain something else someone else has experienced.
Maybe you can render it as well.
Yeah, but over time, you can save those as a recording.
Yeah.
So, like, if I record something I am experiencing, like this right now, into a digital form, and then I give it to my great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter, she's able to experience this in, like, completely immersive VR metaverse world.
Yeah.
But not only that, she's able to stay in this world for 3 weeks because there's enough data.
Yeah, it could be the case that you relay, but let's take this as an example or another scenario. First time, whatever. So first time you rode a bike. Or let's take this as an example because we're right here. And you're able to relay this to your granddaughter 50 years on. And it's not just a video that comes out of your mind. It's a full 3D render of this space.
It could also be the feeling.
It would be the feeling, but she'd be able to maybe sit here.
Yeah, but she might be able to experience like the same emotion that formed the wisdom.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And so 50 years she could be sitting here and experiencing the same emotions
on the podcast.
Yeah.
with
Hello.
AI Insights. GPT 905
Yeah.
million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why it's probably really important now that we make some really, really good memories that we could give to younger people to live through our eyes.
I agree. That's a nice one to end on.
Yeah, crazy. Okay, this has been episode 2 of the something podcast. We haven't decided a name yet. If you do have any good names, please let us know. Otherwise, we will catch you in the next one. I've been Danny.
I've been Hugh.
And see you soon.